Welcome to the People's Choice Award podcast, brought to you in partnership with Tier 1 People and Fintech Australia. The Finnies, Australia's largest and most prestigious fintech awards, are fast approaching, and we want you to be part of it. Sponsored by the Victorian Government and major partners Vocus and SwiftX, the Finnies are a chance to celebrate the amazing people, incredible innovations, and remarkable resilience that the fintech industry is known for and built upon. Fintech Organisation of the Year Award is sponsored by Vocus. Thank you, Vocus, for your support in making the Finnies a reality. We look forward to seeing everyone on the 9th of June in Melbourne, and don't forget to make your vote in the People's Choice Awards. We're joined by Nathan Walsh, who's CEO and co-founder of Athena Home Loans, and they're up for Fintech Organisation of the Year. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Great to chat, Dexter, as always.
It's hard to believe it was 9 months ago that we did this, and you were in, or Athena were in for Emerging Organisation of the Year. What a 9 months.
Feels like 9 years in some ways, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It does, kind of, but then it seems so fast as well. It's just an incredible time for the industry.
Yeah, well, it's nice to be getting back into more normal world. Clearly we're not through it all yet, but just I think there's some real hope that this year really does feel like we're emerging out the other side. So some real optimism there.
Absolutely. Could you tell our listeners a little bit more about Athena Home Loans, Nathan?
Yeah, so Dexter, we're a fintech home lender. Focused home lender. Our mission is to help Australians pay down their home loan faster. And so we're using digital technology to really make the process of getting a home loan simpler and more efficient. And then we can pass that through to borrowers in terms of just great rates that stay great. We launched out to public in early 2019. So we're just a couple of years into that growth journey, and actually pretty exciting moment for us. We just hit $2.5 billion of settled loans yesterday. So wow. We're really exciting in terms of milestone for us here at Athena.
Congratulations to everybody. That's fantastic.
Yeah, no, great team effort, and certainly really feel like there's a real opportunity to go out there and deliver some better solutions to consumers. I mean, it's one of those categories where owning a home is a pretty important goal. The great Australian dream, but there's so many ways that the current proposition in terms of expense, in terms of design, in terms of just how hard it is to go through the process. There's so many opportunities to change home loans for good in terms of how we engage in the category. So real opportunities to deliver some big savings to consumers there.
Awesome. Now, could you tell our listeners a little bit about the origins of Athena and how the idea and then the business kind of came about?
Yeah, so I have a co-founder called Michael Starkey, and we were both working at one of the big banks together. And it is a fairly cliched origin story. Dexter, we were scribbling away on napkins in a cafe in Melbourne, and really identifying really the way that actually how do we use technology to make the process of running that home loan so much simpler and easier, and therefore cut the overheads, cut the branches, cut the bankers, and pass those savings from great technology through to consumers. We've been working with some really talented people in the past, and so we sort of assembled a team in just over a few months, and raised a seed round. Spent about a year building out a platform, and then we're in pilot for a period of time. And then, as we sort of talked about, it was February 2019, a really exciting moment. We're all in the office on a Sunday night, basically switching over from pilot mode to go live. We were launched on the Channel 7 News And then really off to the races. Phone started ringing. I think what we've been really excited about is just the work, the consumer engagement that we've done along the way, really identifying some major pain points in terms of this industry and actually translating that into products in action. And so things like the only loyalty tax-free lender in home loans in Australia. We have a customer guarantee. Will never charge our existing customers more than new customers on a like-for-like loan. And we can sort of talk through a bunch of those examples about how we're really looking to change this category for good. And then what's exciting is now being in a mode where we're really getting some traction in there. And a couple of big milestones just over the last week, Dexter. So we closed out our Series D funding round. So, really now having raised about $200 million of equity. So this was a $90 million round led by SquarePeg and all 7 of our largest investors participated in that round. So really quite exciting that the sort of support that we can get from the local ecosystem in really changing what is a $1.7 trillion category in Australia in terms of home loans.
It's a bit of a kind of who's who on the investor list. Do you want to maybe share with our listeners some of who your investors are?
Yeah, so we some of the leading VCs, so people like SquarePeg and Airtree, Apex Capital, a number of the largest super funds, so Host Plus, Australian Super, Sun Super, financials like Macquarie Bank, Resimac, strategic partners like Salesforce Ventures. And so, we have been very fortunate that we've really had an opportunity to bring together what we think of as some of the savviest investors in the country, really looking to disrupt this particular category. Yeah. It's probably a really fascinating one actually on the journey that you probably just don't appreciate. Certainly I didn't when you start the journey, just how important investors are as partners along the way. And so clearly funding's critical, but just the advice and counsel, the board representation, all those other components just ends up being a really important part of that overall journey. And so we've been really fortunate to have the support from that group of investors.
Well, it's fantastic because I've just found out that I'm actually an investor in Athena. I didn't realize my super fund had invested.
There you go. Good to hear.
Yeah. So don't worry, I won't grill you on this podcast. So where's the business at now in terms of number of people, Nathan?
Yeah, so we have a team of just over 130. And so that's sort of split between the folks who are sort of, we think of as run the business and change the business. So change the business is, engineers, product designers, all of the category about how do we create great platform and proposition for customers. And then clearly as a lender, then we also have, our home loan experts, the folks running credit, treasury, fulfillment, operations, etc. So roughly half between those two sides of the group, based, for the most part here in Sydney. And, we've been very fortunate to have just an incredibly talented group. And that's really been such a big part of the overall success is assembling this sort of wickedly talented team as we've scaled, just that focus on having a group really passionate about the purpose that we're trying to achieve in terms of changing home loans and helping Aussies pay down their loan faster. And so, I think that's ultimately one of the most critical, goals within a startup is, clearly critical who's the group you assemble on day one and actually really get the traction at seed and early stage. But just as importantly, how do you have great people who can themselves attract and extend out a great talent group? So, the pace you can bring innovation, the service you can bring, the reliability of, in lending, the quality of the loans you're writing, et cetera. All of these various functions need to work incredibly tightly together. And ultimately, that's coming back to a really passionate group of folks doing great work to help Aussie borrowers.
Fantastic. No, it's a really competitive space. There's new entrants coming up regularly now as well. How have you gone about differentiating Athena from others who are entering the space, Nathan?
Yeah, no, great question. And this is always a space where there's going to be lots of players involved. I mean, of course, we are in a market that is unusually concentrated in the banks, and particularly the large banks. So 93% of all housing credit in Australia comes from banks and very concentrated in the big four. And that's quite unusual relative to other markets around the world. But as you say, lots of players looking to come in from all sorts of different angles trying to play. We really did start from how do we get a very strong sense of authentic purpose? What are we trying to achieve, and how do we go and build the right proposition for consumers from that? And so, this started with a lot of listening to consumers. What are the pain points? What are they looking to, achieve that's really quite different in terms of proposition? And that then really led us to identifying a number of these components about what they would be looking for about how this industry should work differently. And so that translates into us challenging the industry conventions on lots of different categories. And we sort of talked about killing the loyalty tax, removing the nasty fees, frankly, just using digital technology to make the refinance process really, really simple. And so we overall that translates into our proposition around savings, service, simple. But in the detail, lots of things that we have done, and frankly, a lot of things we're pretty excited about what could come next. Big one for us, late last year, launching of Athena Accelerates. We're really recognising that as consumers do pay down their home loan, they become better customers. And so we're the only home lender that dynamically reduces the lender's interest, so the borrower's interest rate, as they achieve these different LVR tiers and just deliver them savings as they pay down their loan. So lots of these opportunities in the detail for us to say, how does this category work differently? And so ultimately that translates into great product engineering and design in terms of product and platform, and then really terrific marketing and service in terms of bringing that to consumers. And so we just think there's a real opportunity in this space. What's interesting is when you go and look at the views of consumers around their lender, the majority feel like their lender is not on their side. When you go and look at that, the NPS scores, these homeowner customers are some of the unhappiest customers in banking today. So real opportunities to go and redesign this product and do things very differently for consumers. And so that's what we've been really focused on doing.
Yeah, I love hearing that, where the focus is on actually retaining the customer, not just bringing on new customers, because it seems to me that most banks would spend most of their money trying to bring on new customers rather than just keeping their existing customers happy and loyal.
Yeah, and that's a real problem, right? So we think of them as the scorpions, right? They give this shiny rate on day one, and then sting people with rate increases, the loyalty tax, all of this component. And so just this idea that you spend all this effort to bring someone over and then take them for granted and don't love them back, right? And people underestimate just what a big deal that is, right? I mean, for the average homeowner, that's tens of thousands of dollars of excess interest they're being charged because your loyal customers are being systematically charged 0.5% more than the new customers on a loan. And that is one of those real frustration pain point for consumers. And frankly, it just means that ultimately you're just paying a lot more than you should. And given just, what a significant financial commitment this is for most Aussie families, actually making sure you're delivering sustainably great rates to consumers just makes a big difference for their ability to exit out debt, for their ability to achieve whatever their other financial goals are, Get yourself set up for retirement. You've got a passion project. There's other things you're looking to do. And so the feedback we get from consumers when it's not just a story about how do you be shiny on day one and then disappoint, but really thinking through things like accelerates, that their rates actually go down rather than up. And when we sort of, to misquote Michelle Obama, when they go high, we go low, is sort of pretty fundamental to our model.
Cool. Now, you touched on the people that you brought in early days. I've got to say it's been amazing to sit back and kind of watch from day one, or even before day one, the team being assembled, and to see how almost perfectly the plan has been executed to this point. But one of the challenges that we see as companies grow and scale is that the kind of original DNA of the startup starts to dissipate, and you kind of lose some of that edge. How have you managed to kind of retain that as you've grown, so fast and so, at such scale as well?
Yeah, it's an absolutely critical point, Dexter, to sort of continue that conversation around what is the day one magic that you want to retain. But importantly, there are areas that as you scale and go from a team of 12 to a team of 120, you have to think differently about those components. And no doubt that's only going to continue as we grow from here. So we have put a lot of focus on how do we think about the culture that we want to be. And I know this is a conversation a lot of people talk about, for us, we started with this really simple principle that we want to align what we want to be to consumers, so the brand that we stand for. We want the proposition that we deliver, so what we actually build, and our culture, how we behave, we want those to be aligned, right? And so rather than having brand being something marketing does and proposition being something, product does and culture being an HR activity, how do you actually get the fundamental authentic truths? So if you want, for example, to be straight up with customers, to be straight up in how your product's designed, well, how do you actually get that to be behavior that's been embedded deeply into just the way you act with each other? And, in some ways it's a really simple idea, but it was incredibly powerful because what that really allowed us to do is to get a really broad team of very enthusiastic people just to go through and sort of let's keep testing out to say, what does that look like? And so we've actually just recently refreshed, the Athena values and behaviours and what we're looking to do. And it is a story for us about ambition, passion and action. Ambition, we believe we're in a broken category and we want to break what's broken. We want to move away from convention and really design things differently. We want the passion in the team around leading with heart. And so just recognising, the value of diversity, the importance of having people who really are purpose-led and are looking to be a force for good, but importantly, action orientation. And so how do we move with speed and be straight up on all those components? And so just by going through the process of articulating that and really spending time looking at, Netflix and other players around the world that we think of as being best practice, I think it actually has led to some really good quality conversation about what are we doing well? What are the things that we want to keep fostering and working through? But challenge ourselves. Where are areas where we do need to think differently and evolve as well? And so I think what you framed, Dexter, is actually one of the most interesting challenges as a startup about, loving the things that you are when you're a tiny team. But just be very thoughtful about what you want to foster and retain versus where the places where there is growth required. And so that's been a really rewarding and interesting process to go through here at Athena.
It's so great to hear you say that, Nathan. There's no difference between your cultural values and the way in which you should be treating your customers as well. And ultimately, your people are your brand. So to hear you say that, but also to see the success that you're having, as I mentioned, it's almost flawless, the execution, right? And to see that as being one of your kind of fundamental kind of premises of growing the business, I think is just testament to, look, there's a way to grow and there's a way to be successful and to avoid a lot of the growing pains.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, Dexter, that, that authenticity is really good. What I would call out is I do think this is an area where there's some really fantastic conversations around the community around what this looks like and how it works. And so, frankly, we'd be in a mode to say, a bunch of things we're proud of about the way it's been done, but frankly, we'd also be the first to say the generosity around the ecosystem, startups in Australia, of people sharing what's working, what's not. There's constant calls and connection going on. So we would say this is an area where I think there is a real, a sharing mentality about how do we do this well? How do we learn from where the potholes have been so we don't all fall into the same ones? And, we're really appreciative of that, the connections and sharing that, many of the other startups around have done with us. And we love to be in the same position as well.
And I think many of those startups would share something else in that they're purpose-led as well.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to say words like that. It's sort of that's a sort of a claim that lots of people, want to do. And you get, companies like Google that start out with the don't be evil as their sort of mentality. I think what gets really interesting is how do you embed that back into your DNA so that is truly what it's about, not just sort of what's written in a business plan on day one. Yeah. Quite an exciting moment for us. So we're going down the path at the moment of getting B Corp certification. And that's sort of a US, certification, but there's a number of B Corps in terms of the startup community that we've been engaging with there as well. Really that idea to say, how do you embed that deeply in everything that you do? You're thinking about the broader community, environment, team, customers, and really having that balanced scorecard in terms of all the decision making. And so we found that a really valuable process, so that we're really making sure that we're thinking not just our kind of core mission, which is around financial wellness and how do we help folks, get out of debt to save money, but also what are all the other dimensions of that as well. But really coming back to your point around just that ability to assemble great talent, I think when there is a clear sense of purpose about what you're trying to achieve, I think that's really when you combine that with sort of the kind of speed that a startup enables. Those things together are an incredibly powerful combination that we've been really loving.
Yeah, it's so true. And even if your purpose is just to build an app and sell it for a couple of $1 billion in a few years, as long as you're clear with people about that, that's what the purpose is. I think that's cool as well. You'll find the right people who are drawn to that.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think people looking to go in and genuinely, add value to shareholders. I mean, as we sort of talked about, for us, shareholders are super fund members, right? So we've got, an important responsibility to do that. But the best way of doing that is to be a world where you are genuinely solving a problem for consumers, doing that in a way that meets all of those other obligations as well. So I don't necessarily think it's a purpose versus it's how do you actually get alignment across those stakeholders is really where the magic happens. Yeah.
Well, that leads us really nicely on to the close, which is this is People's Choice Award. So why is it that you think people should vote for Athena Home Loans?
Oh, look, I'd probably come back to a different point there, which is there is an incredible set of fintech organisations participating in the Finnies this year. And, it's so encouraging to see both some familiar names who've done incredible things and some fresh names on that list. I mean, Rebecca and the team at Fintech Australia have just done an incredible job bringing this together. So I would be the first one just to say, just vote in the process. Whoever you vote for, I think we would be proud to be just in the group there.
Yeah.
But coming back in, we are proud of what we have achieved. We do believe that home loan is the biggest single financial commitment, for most Australians. The opportunities to deliver savings and design products and innovate, for good. We're really passionate and believe that the opportunity for consumers here really does dwarf many of the other segments in fintech. And so, this is a space where we think we've moved through the startup into some real scale up with our, not just the equity raise, but we also recently announced a $2 billion funding agreement with Cerberus and Bluestone. So really looking to get both the equity and the mortgage funding book really moving at speed. There's a lot of things we're really proud of with that. But I would just encourage listeners, I think the process decks that you're going through encourage people just to listen to the stories, because there's some just fantastic groups of people out there. And whoever you end up voting for, I think there's going to be someone up on stage who we'd be really proud of. Yeah,
and look, I'm so proud to be putting this on as well. And it's really struck me, Nathan, doing this for the second time, that I go back to 2017 and I just look at how far the industry's come. And each time we do these podcasts, it's a moment in time that's captured. And as we look back over the years, it'll just be fascinating, to do, in 5 years' time, where is Athena? And we go back and listen to this podcast. It'll just be amazing.
Yeah, I'm with you, Dexter. We've had the opportunity to have a chat a couple of times now, and I really enjoy just thinking through, what's happened since we last spoke? And often it's just those moments of reflection. You go, things are moving fast. Yeah. There's a lot happening in this space. So, really nice milestones to kind of measure the journey. Well, from all the team at Tier 1 People, we wish you and the team at Athena all the best in the finals. Can't wait to celebrate with you in Melbourne. And you're right, it's just the competition's great. And it's just, I think it's such a milestone just to make it to the finals. It gets tougher every year. Absolutely. Wonderful to chat as always, Dexter. Fintech Organisation of the Year Award is sponsored by Vocus. Thank you, Vocus, for your support in making the Finnies a reality. We look forward to seeing everyone on the 9th of June in Melbourne.
And don't forget to make your vote in the People's Choice Awards.